He had worked to promote closer economic relations and development cooperation. He was also a member of the Indonesian delegation to the United Nations Security Council in 1996 and the United Nations system in New York in 2006 to 2009. We welcome the ambassador, and now I invite him to deliver the keynote address. Ambassador Suryodipuro.
Thank you very much, General Katoch. I hope everybody can hear me fine.
Fine, absolutely fine.
Thank you very much. Esteemed speakers on the panel representing the youths of India and ASEAN, I believe that my fellow ambassador, His Excellency Javed Ashraf, will also be addressing this session. So I also send my greetings to him, to you, of course, General Katoch, to the moderator, Dr. Shristi Pukrem, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me also to greet, I see on the screen is Mr. Ram Madhav, so I also greet him. I send my best wishes to him and to the Asia Foundation. And to all participants, greetings from Chanakyapuri, New Delhi. Good afternoon and good evening to all of you. It's an honor for me to be participating in the ASEAN-India virtual dialogue, to be among the youths of today and leaders of tomorrow. I would like to express my appreciation for this initiative to the Ministry of External Affairs of India, to the India Foundation, and to the ASEAN Secretariat. This meeting is certainly different from the first and second India-ASEAN Youth Summit. Nothing can compensate for direct physical meetings between youths. But through the application of video conferencing in the new normal like now, we are testing the upside of a wonderful opportunity to experience and to think of what the pandemic is, how we are all impacted by it, and how youths can build a better region and world coming out of COVID-19. We in India and Southeast Asia are no strangers to diseases and disease outbreaks. The advent of globalization, however, had made the spread of infectious disease far wider and quicker than at any time before in human history. The outbreak of SARS in 2002 signaled this phenomenon. Countries in our region, we have prepared for such an outbreak, but no outbreaks have taken place of such magnitude and infectiousness as COVID-19 has. Countries responded differently to the outbreaks. We know that there are no silver bullets to address and prevent the spread of COVID-19. A country may begin with a loose social limitation. Another country may begin with complete lockdown, and yet other countries may take measures in between the spectrum. Each of you will bring a unique model from your country dealing with the pandemic. Therefore, the discussions between you will be priceless for future references because of the various experiences and models that you bring to the table. Responding to the outbreak in Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries came together at the political and experts level. A special ASEAN summit was held, just as the ASEAN Emergency Operations Center Network for Public Health Emergencies was activated. Those mechanisms emphasize the importance of international cooperation in fighting COVID-19 pandemic and the importance of joint commitment to fostering global collaboration by placing paramount importance on global health. On our part, Indonesia took necessary anticipatory steps, as many countries have done, to curb the widespread of the pandemic. Indonesia, what we did was we determined special hospitals for handling COVID-19 cases, prepared logistics, set up laboratories and environmental health engineering centers, and a lot more. Like India that issued the Arogya Setu application. Indonesia leveraged technology with similar application called Bersatu Lawan COVID-19. The purpose is to accelerate the consultation process of medical staff at primary level services to identify locations of those who are vulnerable to the spread of COVID-19 and for medical assistance and psychological consultations. And at the global level, for Indonesia, we contributed actively to the deliberations of the World Health Assembly at its meeting last month in Geneva. And we continue to support the WHO and follow its guidelines. Globally, we promote the idea of affordable healthcare for all. This is a theme of Indonesia's chairmanship of the Foreign Policy and Global Health Initiative in 2020, together with Brazil, France, Norway, Senegal, South Africa, and Thailand. We want to turn this unprecedented crisis into an opportunity to achieve affordable healthcare for all, including increasing investment and cooperation in research and development for medicines, vaccines, and other health technologies. Indonesia is part of the Ministerial Coordination Group on COVID-19, coordinated by Canada, where we promote the idea of an information sharing platform to facilitate the work of the private sector with a view to mitigating any disruptions to supply chain. And with India, Indonesia, and Southeast Asia, COVID-19 pandemic has brought new momentum to strengthen cooperation at the bilateral and regional level in affordable healthcare, trade investment, R&D, and in other sectors in health. I believe we should also be cooperating and sharing experiences, not only in modern drugs that are crucial in fighting the pandemic and for our health being, but also in the field of traditional medicines. I believe that every one of us, we have something to bring to the table to contribute to regional India ASEAN collaboration. Youth will be at the forefront in dealing with today's pandemic as well as the other crises of tomorrow. This was also mentioned by Secretary East. COVID-19 has underlined a few things. The first is the importance of information and information technology. Secretary East had also touched on this. Technology plays a crucial role in keeping our society functional, and this has been especially highlighted during the lockdown and quarantine. The ongoing pandemic has made millions of people around the world to adapt with new reality and change their day-to-day routines, including the importance of hygiene. Above all, the pandemic has and is pushing the boundaries of information and information technology to greater speed, depth, and breadth, ultimately pushing for greater community empowerment and social solidarity. Secondly, is the importance of health. Today, we realize that not only are we vulnerable to the smallest of a semi-living being, a virus, but also that further understanding of genomics and of drugs and the interaction between germs and viruses with our immune system has greatly expanded. The third is the importance of the environment. COVID-19 pandemic that has brought the world to a halt has also shown us that Mother Nature cannot be taken for granted because our systems of economics, our systems of political and security, and others are vulnerable to changes in our physical environment. We were reminded, and we are relearning how close humanity is related to Mother Nature. While COVID-19 has caused innumerable challenges, even sufferings, we also see that nature is reclaiming its space. In many, if not most places, skies are once again blue, animals coming out as pressure from humans have receded, schools of fish are growing in the oceans, and every other developments in nature, all of which that we welcome. We see this in the news, we see this in social media. Uh, Basically, all of us welcome and enjoy these changes. Not only is health, not only is the environment healthier, it's also cleaner. And finally, is the importance of cooperation. The new normal world will be different, but not one where countries would have to deglobalize. On the contrary, I believe that amidst lockdown and almost complete cessation of international travels, people's desire to connect is even stronger today. This dialogue is but an example of that desire. The issues facing countries today cannot be addressed by nation states alone. These issues require international cooperation, and it's a broad range of issues that would cover such as health security, food security, energy security, water security, and a broad range of other issues. In our region, COVID-19 will become the catalyst for closer relations between India and Southeast Asia. This is a relationship that had taken place 2 millennia because of geographic proximity, ideational exchanges, as well as travel and trade. And Secretary East earlier mentioned about us being maritime neighbors. I'm convinced that history will bring us closer again. A relationship that had been interrupted by colonialism. Now, today, the relationship will become even more organic. Developments will be natural. It will be a period of back to the future for India and Southeast Asia. In closing, scientists the world over agree that we will be seeing more pandemics in the future, apart from other crises. People of my generation may have answers based on their previous experiences, but may not have the experience to deal with the challenges of tomorrow. In the world which I had grown up in, and trust me, there are many years in me, I had never experienced pandemic and shutdowns and lockdowns of this magnitude. As we look ahead of us, we know that you, the youths of India and Southeast Asia, will be central in the shaping of the new normal and of the new world. Youths of today shall be the bridge of tomorrow. You will see that India-ASEAN relations is not only important, it is special. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your very inspiring and very focused keynote address. Your comments on the close cooperation which took place within the ASEAN countries to counter the pandemic, as also the initiatives taken by Indonesia to tackle COVID-19, make a useful start for the next panel discussion. We deeply appreciate your thoughts in the need for healthcare and for developing a collaborative approach to tackling the pandemic. Thank you once again for taking the time out to be with us here today. Now, for the second panel discussion, we have 5 speakers. Mr. Pianath Soikam from Thailand, Ms. Min An Win from Vietnam, Mr. Sebastian Patogi from Indonesia, Ms. Myat Myat Mon from Myanmar, and Mr. Praket Arya from India. This session will be moderated by Ms. Shrishti Pokhrin, Senior Fellow, India Foundation. All of you would have already been in contact with her for the last quite a few days. Over to you, Ms. Pokhrin.
Thank you, Dhruv sir. Good evening, friends. Namaste to all. We have seen quite an interesting session yesterday, which brings us to the second session of this youth dialogue. We face a pandemic that threatens the lives and the well-being of all people globally. It's not affecting just one of us, but each one of us in this part all over the world. It doesn't stop there. So we as youth, we play a very important role. We are in it together. We, the youth, are called the restless as such, but being restless is not a bad thing. We as ambassadors fighting against the COVID, we have to take a lead role in this, which brings me to the second panel discussion. Today, we have indeed 5 friends joining us for the second panel discussion of various and diverse backgrounds, political scientists, economists, foreign policy experts, which takes me to the first panelist of the session, Dr. Pianath Soikam from Thailand. He is joining us from Thailand. He has been part of the delegation of the second ASEAN-India Youth Summit. Dr. Soikam is a lecturer in politics and international relations and an assistant to the president for academic affairs at Ubon Ratchathani University, Thailand. He received a doctoral degree from St. Andrews University, United Kingdom. Over to you, Dr. Soikam.
Good afternoon, Chesty. Hello. Hello.
Dr. Soikam, we can hear you. Please carry on.
Okay. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, and thank you very much, India Foundation, for organizing this wonderful virtual meeting that brings us together. So before I start with the situation in Thailand regarding the pandemic of the COVID-19, I would like to give you some brief picture of India and Thailand relations. As we know that our two countries, we share a lot of similarities. For example, the cultural relation, we start from having very close in terms of culture. For example, in Thailand, the majority of people, we are Buddhism, and there's so many Buddhist heritage in India that people from Thailand would like to visit India for pilgrimage. And also, for example, language, Bali and Sanskrit language has a lot of influence on Thai culture. In terms of political relations, we have diplomatic relation more than 70 years, and right now in India we have 3 consulates in Mumbai, in Chennai, in Kolkata, and 1 embassy in Delhi. In terms of economic relation, India and Thailand, we are a close partner. There are so many Indian diaspora living in Thailand and doing some business that nowadays there are some Indian series and movie. For example, Sita, Rama, and Nakin is very famous in Thailand. It shows like the close cultural relationship between the two countries. In terms of multilateral connectivity, we are under the umbrella of ASEAN-India summit that bring us together today. Also, India and Thailand, we are a partner of multilateral organization, for example, BIMSTEC and Mekong Ganga Cooperation. And very in the future, the trilateral highway will connect India and Thailand and Myanmar together. And as I already mentioned, we share a lot of cultural relation, economic connectivity, and also we share similarity in terms of facing the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to share experience as young generation, as well as the faculty member and executive board of the university in Thailand. In Thailand, we start realizing that we entering into the pandemic by the end of March. By that time, the people not aware of the pandemic. We just feel that, oh, it's happened in China first and then in South Korea. But the situation became worse by the month of April. The government started the lockdown policy. So people in Thailand during April and in the beginning of May, people working from home, we have the working from home policy. And students, especially in high school and also university, the mode of education, we shift from the physical mode going to school, and then we change to the online platform. Fortunately, our school holidays begin by the end of April and May. So right now we prepare for the next semester to start. To talk about how the youth in Thailand, how students in Thailand gather together in order to fight, to do something in order to fight against the pandemic. We young people in Thailand, we gather together as a group in Facebook group. The Facebook group called like a young student in Thailand. What we share about information about the situation in the country, how the preparedness for all of us, and also we asking the university to discount for our academic tuition fees. As we know that for the coming semester, all academic teaching will be online teaching. So students in Thailand, in some university, asking the university board to give a discount for their tuition fees, at least 10%. And right now, the meeting of the university, president meeting of Thailand, they sent a message to all university that the coming semester, the university will give discount to students for 10% at least. And also the student asking for the help from the university. So the university provide kind of the educational SIM, free internet for students, so that they can study during the COVID time. For right now, we are going into the third phase of easing down. So right now, the government announced that from 1st July, the 1st of July, students can return to school and university, but they have to provide a social distancing and facility, for example, a gel in order to wash hand before entering into the building. I want to move on the role of technology startup and entrepreneur in Thailand. It seemed to be that COVID changed a lot of moment in Thailand, but we can see there's some opportunities for economic and business opportunities. Earlier, we going to market to buy food, to buy some products, but nowadays people using the online platform, for example, the Facebook group, some university students create Facebook online group so that student and current student, alumni, and faculty member can share their business. If you sell some rice, you can post online in order to sell your product to other friends. And then we have more business on delivery business, so that even though we have the pandemic, but we can see some opportunities in terms of entrepreneur, that people can use this chance to start their own business. In terms of geopolitical impact, as the country locked down for two months, and right now we locked down in terms of the international flight. We have some problem because Thailand is located at the heart of mainland Southeast Asia. We connected to Laos and Cambodia, Myanmar and Malaysia. Since we blocked down it seemed to be that the activity across the border, it's quite, I mean, during this time it's quite in a small number, but it seems to be that the government easing down the policy, and right now people along the border can having the economic activities. To talk about the last point that I'm talking about, the situation in Thailand right now, we do not have domestic case for 14 days or 2 weeks in a row. So now the case confirmed in Thailand, only the returning people from abroad. That means that the lockdown policy in Thailand, the partial lockdown, is quite effective. And we have to thank one initiative led by the Ministry of Public Health, that in each village we have a village health volunteer. This group of people will help to look after the case and follow the ministry. So every village in Thailand having this group of people that taking care of COVID-19, and I very thankful for them, and also the medical official who helped the situation better in Thailand. So I would like to share this from now, and maybe let the other speaker discuss on other country case.
Thank you, Dr. Pianat. That was so good to hear you. Just not the perspective from COVID-19 and how to deal with it, but also about the India-ASEAN relations in the larger perspective, bringing in the context of India-Thailand, the aspect of soft power too. Not taking much of time, let's go for the second panelist for the session. We have Ms. Minh An from Vietnam. Ms. Minh An, she is a student in foreign languages, specialized school. She speaks a little bit of French too, which is very interesting. She loves basketball, and then she has been a part of the ASEAN-India Youth Summit dialogue, the Youth Summit which was held in Guwahati last year. She is quite a good basketball player too. So I welcome Ms. Minh An from Vietnam.
Okay, so namaste, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Minh An, and I'm a delegate from Vietnam. And I hope that you guys are hearing me very clearly, right? So first of all, I would like to give my sincere thanks to the India Foundation for inviting me. And it's my privilege to join in our discussion today. And now I'm going to share with you about my personal experience with how Vietnam reacts toward the COVID-19 pandemic with relations to our 45th year of bilateral relationship with India, as well as other ASEAN countries. So the COVID-19 pandemic has caused serious damage to all of us. And the first case in Vietnam was detected on the 23rd of January. And by the end of January, the government had formed a national steering committee for COVID-19 prevention and control, headed by our Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Vũ Đức Đam. And I think that Vietnam was also predictably on higher alert than most other countries because of our border with China and a large amount of travel between the two countries, both business and tourist related. I myself was not in Vietnam when the outbreak started in January, and I only come back in the middle of March. And by this time, Vietnam has already banned all international flights and only allow Vietnamese citizens to come back home in a limited numbers of flights. All citizens coming from foreign countries are asked to strictly follow 14 days of compulsory camp quarantine and another 14 days for self-quarantine at home. It's a difficult time for everyone, but I think it is the best way for us to be cautious, to stay safe and keep things under control. Vietnam has a total population of 95 million people, and up to now, we have a total of 332 cases only, with 316 occurred and returned back to the society normally, and 16 are still under treatment. And we also managed to keep 0 deaths. It is fair to say that now most of the activities in our countries are back to normal again. We're allowed to go to school, to work, to public places, and most of the stores are open as usual. And the government this time are trying to promote domestic tourism. It is proposed that we would reopen the international flights to Vietnam this July to develop tourism. However, we'll have to see how the situation is going to go. And as some of you may know, this year is a very special year for us because Vietnam is the chairman of ASEAN, and we have a very high expectation this year. In fact, we were prepared to host many meetings, many important issues waiting to be discussed. But due to the COVID-19 situation, most of them has been put off except for some, such as the ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN +3 Summit, and some other meetings about fighting with the COVID-19 pandemic. However, I think it's fair to say that it is exactly the pandemic that speed up the technology advancement and online activities in Vietnam and probably in India as well as other ASEAN nations as well. For example, school and university in Vietnam shifted entirely to online teaching. And in the same way, we have online conferences and seminars like this. And also in the pandemic, we have learned so many lessons. We learn how to diversify and how we should not depend on one or too many sources of supply. We can see that countries are now taking action to reconstruct the supply chain, and they're moving the production from China to seek new locations for production. I believe this is a golden opportunity for Vietnam India, and other ASEAN countries also. We will all agree that India is a very big and potential market, and I think that it's a time for Vietnam and India to further develop and open the market for each other. By increasing the economic relation between the two countries, we can reduce the dependence on countries such as China to provide us with the supplies in the market. For ASEAN Vietnam, we have to double our effort in the second half of the year. We shall have to conduct all pending meetings, agendas, such as the ASEAN Summit with our dialogue partner, including India. We expect that India will visit Vietnam to attend the summit and also have a bilateral visit to Vietnam so that we can revitalize our comprehensive strategic partnership. Finally, I believe that India, Vietnam, and other ASEAN countries will come back as fastest growing economies. With determination, I hope our economies will recover as well as our cooperation in the region will be strengthened. And this will bring prosperity to India and ASEAN nations. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope to hear your ideas from all of you.
Thank you, Ms. San, for that comprehensive presentation and sharing the success story of Vietnam in curbing the pandemic. Now we move to the third speaker of the panel, Mr. Sebastian Pertogi from Indonesia. Mr. Sebastian Pertogi has been working as a journalist with the Jakarta Post since January 2013, while also translating several novels and short stories. While working as a journalist, he also freelanced as a market researcher for a study on Southeast Asia's book industry ecosystem funded by the Frankfurt Book Fair. He was one of Indonesia's delegates for the first India-ASEAN Youth Summit. Over to you, Sebastian.
Hi, thanks, Shristi. And I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, so I'm gonna show you a PowerPoint presentation. Like for my presentation here, oh, sorry. I would like to focus on mental health initiatives among Indonesian youngsters in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, yeah, can you see the slides here?
Yeah, we can, Sebastian, but if you can kindly enlarge it.
Oh, okay.
It's not in full screen mode, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, like, can you see the full screen mode now?
This is comfortable, yeah, we can go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So let me give you a bit of context for the Indonesian situation as of June 8th. Like we have still like new cases coming. So now we have like 32,033 cases. And like we see a spike of new cases every day here. But, you know, due to concerns about economic crunch, then the government has decided to relax the social restriction measures. So therefore, like they're allowing people in essential businesses below 45 years old to go out and work again in their offices and conduct their business operations, because a forecast from the Institute for Development of Economics and Finance actually says that if COVID-19 social restrictions, which has caused many business operations to ground to a halt, were to continue to July, then 5 million formal workers may lose their jobs, resulting in a downward social mobility of approximately 100 million middle-class individuals to the threshold of poverty, and the already poor 140 million will fall into extreme poverty. And here I would like to talk about the mental health repercussions, which I have seen among like some youngsters, but then also like people across generations in Indonesia, because I've been writing about it too. So first of all, the large-scale social restrictions, which have lasted for more than 2 months now, have caused Indonesians, like a collective society by nature, to be deprived of a social context, of course, and anxieties and fears regarding the socio-economic uncertainties mentioned above: loss of jobs, loss of dignity, loss of security. And then like different from previous times of crises, that we can still go and visit and meet our friends to obtain social support. Now, because of the social restrictions and physical distancing, we have to reduce that, or maybe like we are deprived of that social support. And the government's mental health hotline has received thousands of calls from people crying for help amid the mental health fallouts due to the pandemic. And this is an interesting data, actually, like the number of global suicides always increase twofold amidst recessions. So if there were like 800,000 people committing suicide last year, then 1,600,000 people may kill themselves due to the pandemic-induced economic crunch. So like that will result in more people dying from suicides than dying from the virus itself. So this is what we're doing, like small steps, because I already gave you the grim picture, but then like Indonesians, like we are known for our strong volunteering activities. And then we are known for our grassroots community-based activities. And like this is one of the solutions, I think, to protect people's mental health during the pandemic, virtual book clubs. So this is called the Baca Rasa Dengar community. This was established in February 1st, 2015. And then previously we organized face-to-face meetings from cafe to cafe. But since March 28th this year, we have swiftly switched to online platforms, and then we have increased the frequency with which we are conducting the book club from like a monthly session to like a weekly on a weekly basis. Yeah. And we have been covered by the South China Morning Post this year, and then like we also have been covered by national television. Let me show you a bit here. And yeah. Yes, so that's like an overview of our meetings. And okay, so like right now we have over 70 members, participants of the book club from Indonesia, but also Timor-Leste. And various research studies have shown that actually social interaction, although like it's a virtual one, can increase immunity, reduces fear, anxiety, and the likelihood of dementia in later life. And reading improves focus and reduces anxiety and negative thoughts. And yeah, actually, like it's also useful because the book club participants also use our sessions as a means to develop themselves, because people who join our club come from various all walks of life. Some are politicians, some are journalists, some are environmental activists, some are corporate employees. Yeah, but then there might be like some limitation, as it might only be accessible to privileged urbanites. But yeah, so that's like what we're doing now. And then like each month we will pick a theme, and then like everyone is free to bring any book, any titles which relate to that theme, and then we will have a divergent conversation. This could last to 6 hours per session. Because of the Malay culture, we like to chit chat a lot. And so far, like we have exchanged like lots of insights, discussing current affairs relating to the politics and environment, but then also exchanging stories, lending each support to each other regarding to each participant's struggle at this time, and mental health problems also. So it's also like a psychological first aid kind of weekly meeting. So yeah, and then like in terms of the India-ASEAN potential cooperation in the future. Because, you know, actually like in March 2020, we were about to celebrate this 71st anniversary of the India-Indonesia bilateral cooperation, but because of the pandemic, then we had to cancel the event. But there are some highlights which I have quoted from the ambassador of India to Indonesia, Mr. Pradeep Kumarawat, from the National Day celebration in January. So yeah, in his speech, like he was highlighting a similar belief in the common principles of Pancasila, which includes a commitment to protect diversity and social welfare for all, which can be like a common ground in which we base our cooperations in the future. And yeah, and the similarity of population number and geographic characteristics of both countries can also inspire partnerships in healthcare infrastructure, especially like, you know, within the context of the coronavirus outbreak. And Indonesia and India has a similar healthcare insurance schemes. So like these are like the main points of my presentation. And I think like this kind of book club meetings or community-based social support platforms can serve as a model for mental health protection. And then like if any of you are willing, are interested to join us, then please send us a DM in our Instagram. It's called Baca Rasa Dengar. I will send the name of the Instagram account on the chat box. So thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Could you please stop the screen sharing? Yeah. Thank you, Sebastian. That was very interesting. It was indeed bringing in a different dimension to this panel discussion, talking about mental health. What I found very interesting is about the virtual book clubs in these times of pandemic. That is quite a good step which the youth of your country has taken up, yourself being involved in it. Not further ado, let me move to the next speaker of our panel, Ms. Myanmar Mon from Myanmar. Ms. Mon is currently pursuing a Master in Public Policy at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in US, Singapore. Before she came to grad school, she worked in Myanmar for 3 years in promoting peace, federalism, and constitutional reform in Myanmar. In 2018, she was a UNESCO China Great Wall Program Fellow. Over to you, Ms. Mon.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
It's very nice to meet the staff from India Foundation, and I was an India Foundation Kautilya Fellow back in 2019. So happy to meet you all again. On my note, I will present in five parts. The first thing is an overview situation of the present situation, COVID-19 situation in Myanmar. And secondly, on the government response. And third, the economic response and political implication in Myanmar. And then finally, India-Myanmar cooperation during the pandemic time. So in Myanmar, the first COVID-19 case was confirmed on March 23rd. As of now, 8 June, there are 243 confirmed cases, and recovery is 159, and the 6 people dying because of the pandemic. So a lot of the cases are found to be in Yangon, which is the biggest city in Myanmar. So some of the townships in Yangon were under lockdown during April and May. The overall strategy Myanmar government has used is intensive quarantine because we cannot afford to do intensive testing like Singapore is now doing. So what there's one challenge for Myanmar government is the thousands of migrants workers from China and Thailand coming back to Myanmar. And then that, especially in April and May, a lot of the migrant workers are coming back, and then the government, they have to respond immediately to quarantine thousands of migrant workers daily. So there's one opportunity that arises from COVID-19 in terms of governance system in Myanmar is that there is strong coordination among the state governments to quarantine the returnees. Like for example, because bordering with China is Shan state, and then bordering with Thailand is a Kenyan state. So if the returnees goes back to Myanmar, they will have to be quarantined in the respective states that they first arrived. But then this state and then their host states has to communicate to try to transport these returning to their home townships or home villages. So at this, because of the pandemic, the government, the among state government relation and among state cooperation has improved a lot. And then secondly, we can also observe that new governance and monitoring mechanism also arise during the COVID-19 response. Like for example, the State Council of Myanmar, Daw San Suu Kyi, does a Zoom call with the Chief Minister, the local governments, authorities, minister, teachers, nurses, doctors, parents, and then normal lay people, so that so she does the Zoom call session every other day for about an hour, and then the Zoom session was broadcast live on her Facebook page. So that means that the central government's mechanism is strong enough to respond to the local needs, and then the central government is also responsive to the updates and the inputs from the on-ground situation to respond the crisis. So the third factor, which is quite similar to what our participant from Thailand has mentioned, is that the response mechanism in Myanmar is locally driven. For example, at the village level, the village head has their own quarantine facility, so that if a returnees miss the government transportation or the government quarantine facility at the village level, they have their own community facility quarantine. So so there is so that the coordination mechanism is very much is very much responsive to the needs. But the downside of this is that the social stigma to the returnees and to the people from Yangon in general is getting serious and serious. So some villages and some locals, they don't want to accept the returnees from foreign countries, or they don't want to accept the guest visitor from Yangon. So this is kind of a social stigma problems running around in Myanmar now. So, but on the economics front, secondly, on the economic fronts, the government has released the COVID-19 Economic Relief Plan, which is called CERP, at the end of April. This is actually the first fiscal stimulus package that is released in Myanmar and the first biggest, of course, in Myanmar's modern history. And this plan includes monetary stimulus packages, easing the banking sector, promoting the trade and investment, and other social support schemes like electricity bill relief and conditional cash transfer to the low-income households. And So this being the first coordinated fiscal stimulus in Myanmar modern history, it also supports the low-income households and other essential food distribution and things like that. So this means that Myanmar can draw upon these kind of opportunities coming from COVID-19 to build the policy foundation and the governance coordination mechanism on how to build a more equal society in Myanmar. On the politics front, we have elections in coming November, and then the Union Election Commissions announced that the election will go ahead as planned because the virus situation is quite contained as of now. This means that for this National League for Democracy government right now, the upcoming 5 months and how it responds to COVID-19 will determine public trust and also the election result in coming November. So lastly, on my note on India-Myanmar cooperation during the pandemic, on April 30, Prime Minister Modi has had a discussion with our state councillor to increase cooperation on responding in the fight against the virus. So, and then secondly is that the India Air Force also have evacuated Myanmar students who are left behind in Wuhan and then missed the charter flights. So, and then there are also a lot of several donations made by India Embassy to the Myanmar Ministry of Health and Sports. And this is the and this I believe is the best time to improve cooperation, show friendship, and then in solidarity together. So to conclude my discussion, I have three main points I want to make. First is that Myanmar is performing quite well in response to the COVID-19 virus through intensive quarantine strategy and better coordinations between the government. And second is if handled well enough on the pandemic, the economic and social stimulus packages during the pandemic can be an opportunity to build a more equal society in Myanmar. And the thirdly, we have seen a lot of international assistance coming from World Bank, South Korea, China, and India, and then it matters a lot for Myanmar, which is very vulnerable to international shocks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mon. That was very interesting presentation of yours. I personally like the point which you said about the response mechanism with the involvement of the village head. It's just going to the last man on the, standing on the queue, getting them involved, or who's the last man standing on the line, getting them involved and be a part of this fight against the pandemic. So we can go into the Q&A and the discussions much later. Now I invite upon the last speaker of the panel, Mr. Praket Arya. Mr. Praket Arya is a senior research fellow at India Foundation and economist by education. He is an alumni of the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. He has been published and presented papers at international conferences organized by the Ross Congress Foundation, Concert Eurasia, and Chulalongkorn University. Over to you, Praket.
Thank you, Srishti. Namaste, everyone. Very happy to be here, and it was lovely to listen to all of you. I'm going to be sharing with you today some information about India during the Corona crisis and a few of my personal thoughts and opinions about how we're dealing with it. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect. So in a 1959 speech, President John F. Kennedy famously said that when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Although today it is widely recognized that this is not the correct interpretation of these Chinese characters, but his wisdom about a crisis yielding a unique opportunity may be more important to all of us than ever before. As President Kennedy said, out of crisis can emerge new and incredible opportunities, particularly if traditional approaches and paradigms are questioned and challenged. During a crisis, incentives and motivations changed, leading to cooperative behaviors and the creation of new systems and structures. They can get our collective consciousness streamlined and focusing our minds and attention to solving the problem at hand. And with regards to the corona pandemic, this is exactly what it has done for all of us. India's coordinated long-term strategy in this regard to use this crisis as an opportunity can be summed up in 3 words. This is Atmanirbhar Bharat, which simply translates into self-reliant India. So I'm going to be explaining what this means through a few examples, and then we can have a little bit of a discussion about it afterwards. So to understand self-reliance, we need to speak about HCQ, that is hydroxychloroquine. This is a drug that I'm sure all of you all must have heard about in the last month or so. India has a huge pharmaceutical sector and it manufactures 70% of the world's supply of HCQ. Although there is debate about its effectiveness in treating COVID-19 positive patients, India has supplied HCQ and among others paracetamol tablets to over 133 countries, both as grant and on commercial basis as well. So in numbers, that is 440 million HCQ tablets and over 1.5 billion paracetamol tablets. Now, the issue with manufacturing HCQ, even though we're the largest manufacturer of it, started when Chinese API suppliers, API is active pharmaceutical ingredients, hiked the prices of these API by 10 to 20 fold. Some of the ingredients saw an almost 400% increase in price. So raw materials that were earlier available for 6,500 rupees per kg, in February, by March, they were at 70,000 rupees per kg, which is a steep rise. And since 80% of these APIs are imported from China, we faced major hurdles in manufacturing this drug. Although there may be a lot of reasons why the Chinese had to hike the price of this, there might have been a higher demand in China and the world actually, including, there might have been delays in freight because of congestion at ports and price manipulation by intermediaries. What India realized is that since we are so dependent on China for manufacturing a drug of which we are the largest manufacturer, we needed to reverse integrate our supply chain and be more self-reliant. And that, in my opinion, is where the story of self-reliant India starts, especially during the corona crisis. So how did we build self-reliance and deal with this corona crisis? A great example is talking about the 3 aspects that are very important in dealing with this. That is PPE kits, testing swabs, and masks. In January of 2020, we made 0 PPE kits in India, absolutely 0. We had a requirement of just about 50,000 kits a year, and we used to import almost all of it. Our production capacity was somewhere around 40,000 or something. Today, within a span of 2 months, we are producing 450,000 PPE kits on average every day in order to fulfill our domestic and demand, and also with the intention of ramping up production to export to other countries in the world. So in 2 months, we have built a $1 billion industry from scratch by setting up supply chains quickly, developing new technologies, materials, and testing facilities. We have now become the 2nd largest manufacturer of PPE kits in the world, and given a breath of fresh life to our textile sector, which was in a bit of a limbo because of COVID. With testing swabs, as the COVID pandemic spread quickly, India faced a twin challenge of a short supply of testing swabs of those imported from China, and the steep price that these imports were costing us. Each swab was rupees 17 per stick, and in many cases the quality was proving to be inferior. So within 10 days, the Ministry of Textiles took a lead and got in touch with leading business houses, and within 10 days we were producing 100,000 testing swabs at rupees 1.7 per swab, which is 1/10 the price. And with planned automation, this number is likely to go up to 500 to 600,000 swabs a day, bringing the price further down to ₹1 per swab. The highlight of this example here is that because of necessity, we were able to discover a new way of combining resources from two different companies to create a WHO standard quality product duly tested and manufactured by a third company in just 10 days. So I found this to be a very relevant example that I thought I should share with all of you. It's the same story with masks as well. When the pandemic broke out, we did not have enough masks for domestic use. So we banned the exports of the same to make sure we had enough of what we needed. But with ensuing time, we have built up our capacity. Today, we are not only meeting our requirements, but have a surplus production capacity of 530 million masks every day. These also include a surplus capacity of 1 million N95 masks and the regular 3-fold masks that we use. So not only are numerous startups entering this field now, we also have women in remote villages restarting defunct tailoring units to produce masks, shoe covers, lab coats, and equipment like that. There is an example of a village in Andhra Pradesh where there are 200 women who are turning out 15,000 masks, 6,000 shoe covers, and 5,000 lab coats and supplying them to the government every day. So this is quite interesting. Another important aspect here is that it's also encouraging startups to come up with new innovative solutions to enter the market. An example of this is shown here on the right. This image that you see is basically a vending machine, which an Indian startup company has come up with. It's a mask vending machine. So it can be installed in a limited space in commercial establishments, and it's coin operated. And since it's available 24/7, doesn't require human intervention or contact. So it's a very innovative solution of dealing with the crisis. Another example is a Delhi-based firm that innovated a mask incinerator so that masks can be disposed of in a sustainable manner. There are many such examples of such things, from ventilators to face shields, not just in India, but all over the world. Because I think, as I mentioned before, crisis brings opportunity, and that's the key here. And entrepreneurs thrive in crises because today entrepreneurship is not just about building a business and scaling it to generate a profit, but the more modern definition of entrepreneurship is also creating an innovative product which solves big social problems. So like how with regards to corporates, we talk about corporate social responsibility. In entrepreneurship, the concept of individual social responsibility is very important. Moving on very quickly, there are a few questions that need to be answered. Can self-reliance be sustained of what we're trying to do? And more importantly, is it feasible? How practical is it? And does it have a shelf life given the interconnected nature of our world? Is this the new normal, or are these short-term direct responses to the corona crisis? Can these temporary shifts create a long-term disruption in the businesses of the future? In my opinion, these are short-term adjustments we've had to make in order to fight the pandemic. However, some of these shifts will and must continue in order for us to become self-reliant, particularly with regards to the use of information technology. As to the question of actually becoming self-reliant, it does not happen overnight, but the pandemic has forced us, all of us, into a corner and reevaluate the way we see ourselves going into the third decade of the 21st century. And just in case there is any doubt, I want to say clearly that self-reliance in any way does not mean isolation. And herein it becomes essential that we turn our attention to the role leaders play in this. Crises are not a prerequisite for innovation or positive change in the world, but major reforms and new paradigms often require the breakdown of publicly recognized old orders, institutions, and processes. Resolving such crises and charting a more positive trajectory depends in large part on the leadership. Leaders are essential to take different and frequently unpopular measures before and during a crisis, and such leaders need courage and humility to actually first admit the gravity of the situation and the challenges at hand, to develop the necessary apparatus to meet these challenges. Sometimes such crises enable great leaders because the situation changes public mindsets and makes the public more open and even demanding of change. But in other cases, crises need a leader to step forward and offer a vision and narrative to overcome this challenge. The leader has to take risks of exploring new and unconventional solutions and dedicate the resources and time to make them happen. The crisis can offer the leader the circumstances and motivation to take great risks and leaps forward, but the leader must grab it, finding the solutions to our increasingly global and interconnected crises. And India, in my opinion, is doing so fabulously well in large part because of its leadership. So closing remarks, I think India is unique, its problems are unique, and so are its solutions. I think there is this common thread of Asian ingenuity that ties us all together, India and all the 10 ASEAN countries, which enables us to come up with unique solutions to our very, very unique problems. The picture here that I've shown is a very good example of that. Pictured here is an electric motorbike designed by a self-made automobile engineer, Partha Saha, based out of the northeastern Indian state of Tripura, which has a 1 meter gap between the rider and the passenger so they can maintain social distancing while traveling. We've seen many such examples of such ingenuity in the last 2 months, and we definitely need to see much more of that. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakeet. Thank you for sharing the ideas from the Indian perspective, talking about the Atmanirbhar Bharat, the self-reliant. Resilience is the key to these times of pandemic. We don't have much of a time right now, so we won't be taking any more Q&A or comments. I wish we had more time to share our ideas, opinions, but we have overshoot the time. We have the next keynote address by Ambassador Javed Ashraf joining us from Singapore, and he's already here. Before I end this session, I want to thank all the 5 panelists joining us from all the other countries as well as from New Delhi. Thank you all. Thank you to all the delegates. It was indeed an enriching panel. I hope that this youth dialogue and then this panel has helped us to have more conversations, more dialogues, and explore more to work together in times of the pandemic. So over to you, Dhruv sir.
Thank you, Shrishti. I think this panel discussion was conducted very well. My compliments to you and to all the 5 panelists. I enjoyed listening to all of you. Absolutely wonderful views. Now for the final part of today's session, it is my proud privilege to introduce Ambassador Javed Ashraf, who is India's High Commissioner to the Republic of Singapore. And he has been there since November 2016. He is an economics graduate from St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, and he also has a management diploma at master's level from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. A career diplomat, he joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1991 and has served in Frankfurt, Berlin, Kathmandu, and Washington, D.C. He has also headed the Americas Division in the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi from 2010 to 2012. High Commissioner Ashraf has served as Joint Secretary in the Prime Minister's office under former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, and also in the PMO under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He will be leaving very shortly as India's High Commissioner from Singapore and will be taking on his new assignment as India's next ambassador to France. We are indeed very happy to have the ambassador here with us. And now may I request Ambassador Javed Ashraf to kindly deliver the keynote address. Over to you, Ambassador.
Well, thank you very much, General Katoch, for the introduction. To Ram Madhavji, if you're watching it, to all the eminent members of the India Foundation, to the diplomatic colleagues from ASEAN countries in Delhi, and to all the wonderful participants, the young participants from both India and ASEAN. It really is a privilege and a very special one to be able to address the ASEAN-India Youth Summit sitting here in Singapore. That we are able to do it in these difficult times is both a testimony to the importance that we attach to ASEAN-India relations and to the objective of bringing our youth together, but also a tribute to the perseverance and tenacity of India Foundation that has persisted with its ASEAN-India Youth Summits despite this complete lockdown all around. Now, I have spent the last 10 years either living in India or in Southeast Asia, especially here in Singapore. There are many things that connect us. But what strikes me as the most defining feature of India and Southeast Asia is the level of optimism and confidence in India and in this region. And this stems in large measure from the demography of the 640 million people of Southeast Asia and the 1.3 billion people of India. We are blessed with the power of youth, bred in diversity, brimming with talent and innovation, enterprise and energy, and buoyed by the surging tide of aspirations in our region. As I have gone around Southeast Asia, and as I've seen in India, there are just remarkable examples of youth power and innovation that is transforming lives across our countries. Today, we are meeting at a time of a great pandemic, as some have described it as the most dangerous crisis in a century. It has tested all our nations. Each nation has done what it can and what it must to slow the spread, save the sick, and secure livelihoods. We also see the incipient signs of international cooperation. But even at its modest level, we see the power of people and societies and nations working together. Our greatest strength has been the human solidarity that has acted as a shield against this invisible foe. We have been lifted by millions and millions of examples of compassion, commitment, courage, and community service, including those of medical professionals and healthcare workers and service providers. But what has been striking is the youth that has been at the front line of helping those who need it the most. They have seen disruptions in their lives too, in education, in sports, and in social contacts. But in observing the discipline that is needed in this to combat this pandemic, each of them has become a frontline worker. And more than anywhere else in the world, we see solidarity, social responsibility, self-restraint, and service among the youth in Southeast Asia and India. And we see astonishing examples of innovation that is driving solutions to this pandemic and to restoring a degree of normalcy in our disrupted lives. This pandemic has driven home in sharp reality our interconnected lives. But we also know that the path forward out of this crisis to heal our societies, to restore our economies, and to repair the lives of people will also require us to recognize our interdependence. But what we see today, whenever the world has come together, whenever countries have come together after pandemics, after wars, after conflicts, when they have been driven by the belief that each of us is better off when we work for the larger good of humanity, we have created a better and a more resilient world. We see that in ASEAN too. In the 60s, ASEAN was a crucible of brutal conflicts. Today, these are 10 countries working together to reshape the destinies of their people. We saw that after World War II, when we built the institutions that have stood us well in these times. But the path ahead after pandemic is not yet clear. The global order was already in a state of flux. The economic orthodoxies of the past few decades was under challenge. We're seeing trade tensions grow, technological decoupling becoming a possibility, sentiments rising against globalization, protectionism on the rise, reaction to migrations taking place. But the pandemic could make it worse. We might enter a world that might not be as kind, it might be harsher, it might be riven with more conflicts and contests and rivalry. The future, see, a crisis sometimes telescopes the future into the present. And we are beginning to see that. But we also see its silver linings. We see, for example, the drive to digitalization and innovation. We see renewed emphasis on healthcare, on education, on making a more compassionate, just and equal society, on climate change. So the path before us has a fork now, and we have to make our choices. And we must take the high road of working together as people and as nations. And we can never overestimate the power of youth to change the course of life, of history. And this generation of youth has faced its fair degree of challenges, from terrorism to global financial crisis, and now to the pandemic. But they have shown their resilience. And this is a generation that is far more conscious, far more concerned about the challenges of our time, far more connected and far more committed to resolving them. This is what gives us optimism and confidence about the future. It is the youth. And India and ASEAN have the largest pool of youth power in the world. And we must work together more and shoulder greater responsibilities as the youth of India and ASEAN region, because there is much that connects us. Our heritage, for example. For more than 2 millennia, the tides of ocean, the winds of monsoon, and the force of human aspiration have forged a timeless links between India and Southeast Asia. We can see it play itself out in daily lives of our people. We have both been enriched by it. We see it, for example, in our worldview. India and ASEAN nations strongly believe in fostering a world built on cooperation, which is safe, secure, and stable, free from great power rivalries and competition, connected by secure seas, integrated by trade, and underpinned by a rule of law and anchored in ASEAN centrality and unity. This is the vision which Prime Minister Narendra Modi had articulated in Singapore when he delivered the keynote address at Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018. And that is what continues to guide us and will continue to guide us. Our futures are interlinked. That is the lesson of history, and that is the call of the future. We are neighbors, maritime and by land. We are part of the Indo-Pacific region. We are central to it. Forces that will shape this region affect us equally. Opportunities that beckon us are available to both India and ASEAN. So the future that we can build together will depend a lot on how we come together to work with each other, to build a secure and stable and peaceful region that we need, and to reinforce and build our prosperity that we aspire to. And if India and ASEAN need to work together, and I can assure you that no region has greater priority for our Prime Minister and for our government than the Indo-Pacific region. No policy initiative gets as much attention as our Act East policy. And I have just spoken a few minutes back to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, as my favorite call. And he emphasized again the importance that ASEAN nations attach to relations with India too. So if we have to build this relationship, it is the youth which will sow the seeds of the future partnership. And that is why I really commend this initiative of India Foundation, backed by the Ministry of External Affairs. So what must we do together? We must get our youth to engage more, to spend more time with each other in colleges and schools, doing internships in each other's countries, working with each other in laboratories. And we must spend more time doing social impact projects together. But there is something that excites me even more. It is the power of innovation and what we can do together. This is what has excited me the most over the past 3 years. And when we are talking of COVID, let me give you an example of a young Indian who lives in Singapore. And as a response to COVID, he has developed a little device which is like Fitbit, which you can buy for $18, which measures parameters like fever, blood pressure, heart rate, SpO2, and also fatigue levels. Something that can indicate the possibility of COVID. And this is engineered in Bangalore. This is how today innovation can bring our people together. And it is being used by the government here in Singapore and in many countries around the world. And before I conclude, I wanted to give those of us who are in India and those of us who are in ASEAN region, some of the initiatives that we are taking for the youth in the realm of innovation and technology and startups. One, in 2018, Prime Minister Modi had suggested to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong that we should start an India-Singapore hackathon for our university students. We've already had 2 editions of it. And the 3rd edition this year, at his suggestion, will be an India-ASEAN hackathon. And it isn't ASEAN teams competing against single Indian teams. It will be the youth of India, Singapore, and the rest of ASEAN forming teams together and working on problems that we all confront. We have, for example, the first country where we have launched India's payment products, Bheem and RuPay, is Singapore. Together, we are working on a platform called Business Sans Border that will connect the MSME sector and provide a value chain solution in India, ASEAN, and beyond. In 2018, in November, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi became the first global leader to deliver the keynote address at the Singapore FinTech Festival, which is the largest FinTech festival in the world. And he inaugurated a platform called Apex. It connects FinTech companies to banks and financial institutions, and it is powered by ASEAN Bankers Association and Monetary Authority of Singapore. Today, there are 200 FinTech companies on that platform and about 60 banks. This is a platform which is bringing about 80 Indian FinTech companies into close partnership with banks in ASEAN region and vice versa, Singapore and ASEAN-based FinTech companies in collaboration with banks in India and elsewhere. We have similarly, you've all heard about India's extraordinary journey with the India Stack, the public digital platform based on Aadhaar, cell phones, and bank accounts, for example. And this has created the largest set of APIs anywhere in the world, which we call the India Stack. And that is transforming governance, public delivery of service, mainstreaming the marginalized, empowering the weak, putting banking and pension and insurance within the reach of all, and innumerable different benefits. Together with Singapore, we are working on a project that can translate this experience for ASEAN and the rest of the world. It is important because we share many similar traits and many similar challenges. Similarly, we've got a platform that High Commission of India has set up called India-Singapore Entrepreneurship Bridge, which brings startups in India, Singapore, and ASEAN together. We've had 3 editions of that in the course of these last 2 years. There is Singapore FinTech Festival, where I see the youth of India, Singapore, and ASEAN working together as one. So there are innumerable new examples of the way we are collaborating together. And today, as the world is battling pandemic, as we are looking to a future where we want the planet to be healthier, where we want our world to be more compassionate, where we want our society to be more inclusive, where we want our worlds to be more cooperative and more peaceful, we can use the power of technology and innovation to come together and work as India and ASEAN, because it is in your hands that lies the future of a partnership that holds great promise for our region and for our world. So before I conclude, let me just say that we must draw upon the comfort of our culture, the familiarity of our history, the pull of the opportunities, and above all, the power of our innovation, the power of our youth to craft a new partnership and a new journey on an ancient route. Thank you very much. God bless you. Stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you lead India and ASEAN into greater heights in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. It simply remains for me to thank Ambassador Javed Ashraf for what is undoubtedly a most focused and inspiring address, delivered with great eloquence and passion. His hope that the pandemic with which we are currently faced with will lead to a better world fills us with the much needed hope to overcome the challenges, which undoubtedly will be immense. The ambassador spoke of the choices we have to make, and he expressed the hope that our youth will rise up to those challenges to deliver the better world which we all look forward to. Thank you, Ambassador. I personally enjoyed every bit of this keynote address. It has really innovated me. We at India Foundation wish you a very wonderful and rewarding tenure, your next tenure in Paris. With this, we come to the end of day 2 of the dialogue. We will meet again tomorrow for the third and final session at 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Till then, Namaskar, Shubhratri, and Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Potash.